Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The testimonies, reactions, and proceedings are based on public court documents, verified media coverage, and dramatized interpretations to illustrate the collapse of a once unshakable empire. Day 14 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial was already historic before it began. The courtroom buzzed not from whispers, but from restraint. Lawyers tightening their arguments, reporters clenching pens, security doubling up on surveillance. A full press blackout had been placed on the witness list, and even veteran court sketch artists were warned not to pre-draw anyone. The mystery didn't last long. At 10:03 a.m., the lead prosecutor stood and said simply, "Your Honor, the government calls Mr. Thomas Cruz Mapother." The room erupted. Audible gasps, shuffling seats. A man in a tailored Navy suit and military posture stepped into the gallery, and in a moment that defied Hollywood, history, and every assumption about who might walk into this trial.
Okay, for now, focus here for a minute. Don't worry, their drama will keep going on. Think a little about yourself too. An Indonesian scientist has uncovered a shocking truth about belly fat, and it has nothing to do with diet or exercise. 95% of people who tried this strange bedtime ritual lost 25 pounds or more. Some even dropped over 50, all while sleeping. No gym, no starving, just one simple step before bed. It sounds crazy, but it's backed by science. Tap the link in the description and see for yourself.
Tom Cruise walked down the aisle. No cameras were allowed, but everyone would remember his face. Calm, cold, purposeful. He was sworn in, and what followed was not just a testimony, it was a revelation. "I'm not here because of celebrity," he began, looking straight at the jury. "I'm here because this man," he said, pointing directly at Diddy, "tried to pull me into something I didn't understand, and thank God I didn't stay." The courtroom went still. Cruz recounted a 2016 encounter, one not publicized, not archived on celebrity blogs, not documented in studio calendars. It was pitched as a private summit, he explained, an elite network of entertainers creating a mutual support system. Creative control, financial leverage, I was intrigued. He described being flown to a compound in Miami under the guise of a charity collaboration. From the outside, it looked legitimate. Palm trees, assistance, confidentiality contracts, but inside it was surreal. Cruz testified that within an hour of arrival, he was asked to hand over his phone, sign an NDA, and remove his shoes. I thought it was eccentric. Artists are weird. But then I noticed the cameras, hidden in corners, behind the vents, framed mirrors that didn't reflect right. Cruz said he was escorted to a room labeled TR3, a red-lit chamber with velvet curtains and a two-way mirror. There was a tray, 2 glasses, a folder. Inside were surveillance stills of other celebrities, faces blurred, situations compromising. Diddy walked in and said, "This is how we protect each other." And at this point, Diddy's attorney objected, "Your Honor, this is theatrical nonsense." But the judge allowed Cruz to continue. I asked him, "Is this blackmail?" He laughed, said, "No, this is unity." That's when I left. I got up, walked barefoot to the front gate, and called my pilot from a staffer's phone. The courtroom was frozen. Diddy didn't react. He stared straight ahead. Cruz continued. 2 days later, I received a package, no return address. Inside was a gold. The prosecutor held up the item, now entered as Exhibit 44F. The USB was analyzed earlier in the trial, encrypted with biometric locks. It had taken federal agents 4 months to crack. What they found were raw video files, hundreds of them. Hours of footage from parties, gatherings, private retreats. Many of them time-stamped and geolocated to properties owned by Combs. Cruz's clip was not among them. But his name, according to metadata analysts, appeared twice. Once in a potential _recruit_ list, and again in a folder labeled defectors. I didn't go to the press, Cruz said, because at the time I thought no one would believe me, and I didn't want to be part of something that toxic. So I disappeared from it. But now, I'm here. Because others didn't get the chance to walk away, the prosecution introduced an internal email seized from Diddy's security team in 2017. It read, "Cruz isn't biting. Move on, but keep the footage." Diddy leaned into his lawyer, whispered, shook his head. But his mic was hot, and the words were caught on record. He's lying. He wanted in. I turned him down. The judge ordered a short recess. Court officials escorted Cruise to a secure holding room. Reporters flooded the hallway. Tom Cruise versus Diddy exploded on every news outlet in the country. Within 30 minutes, Variety, Deadline, and CNN were running breaking banners. TMZ posted a sketch of Cruise pointing at Diddy with the headline, "He tried to recruit me too." Back in court, the prosecution doubled down. They introduced corroborating witness testimony from a former event coordinator known as Alex V, who previously worked on celebrity onboarding at the now-defunct Freak-Off retreat program operated through a Combs-affiliated shell, LLC. Tom Cruise was a target, Alex said. They loved people with clean public images. He was their white whale. If he joined, it would normalize everything else. Did he ever agree? The prosecutor asked. No, he saw through it, fast. Then came the bombshell. Alex confirmed that the folder, Defectors, included profiles on Cruise, Oprah, Keanu Reeves, and surprisingly, Ellen DeGeneres, who, as you recall, had testified earlier in the trial regarding what she saw at Diddy's. The list was titled Unconverted. Diddy's empire wasn't just a business. It was a campaign, a pipeline, a grooming operation that used secrecy, power, and surveillance to bait loyalty and punish dissent. Cruise's testimony cracked that wide open. But it wasn't over. The judge allowed a sealed document to be read into record. It was a 2018 letter from a federal investigator who attempted to subpoena Combs years ago based on intel that high-profile Hollywood names were being used as decoys and bait to lure in new targets. The effort was buried, the letter was signed, but never acted on until now. By lunch, social media had exploded. Tom Testifies trended at #1 globally. Influencers posted reaction videos. Former co-stars of Diddy and Cruise posted cryptic messages. One from Jamie Foxx, "This world's darker than you know." Another from Leah Remini, "Told y'all." When the trial resumed, the prosecution submitted 2 final pieces for the day. First, a redacted transcript from a 2020 internal Zoom call between Revolt TV executives. The Voice ID system confirmed the speaker was Diddy. Cruise didn't play ball, but we have enough footage of him to keep him silent. If he ever talks, we drop the reel. The second was a credit card statement from a Combs-controlled Amex account showing a $22,000 0-cents expense labeled editing Cruise/vanity composite. Diddy's team argued it was for a parody skit. The prosecution claimed it was psychological leverage. Tom Cruise may be one of the most powerful actors alive, the prosecutor said during closing remarks, but even he wasn't immune. That tells you everything about the scale of this. As court ended, Diddy was escorted out through a side exit. No press, no comment. Tom Cruise, however, released a short statement through his rep. One sentence, "Power means nothing if you use it to trap people in silence." And then he was gone. Helicopter waiting. No paparazzi managed to follow. No one saw him again that day. But his words, they stayed. In the courtroom, on the record, in the minds of a jury now forced to consider that even Hollywood's most untouchable had been touched by this machine. And as court prepares for day 15, one question hangs heavier than all the others. If Tom Cruise got out, how many others didn't? Day 15 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial began under the kind of silence that doesn't come from nerves, but from shock that hasn't yet settled. The courtroom was already at capacity when the judge entered, her robe moving like a blade through the thick air of anticipation. The day before, Tom Cruise had turned the trial on its head, and today, the ripple effects were turning into tidal waves. A new set of marshals were stationed by every door. Reporters were ordered to remain seated during witness movement. And for the first time since the trial began, a secondary security team flanked Diddy's own bench. Not to protect him from the crowd, but to protect the court from whatever might come next. Your Honor, the prosecution opened. We intend to build on yesterday's testimony. Today, we are entering the phase of intent. Not only who knew, but who enabled. Who was asked, who declined, and most importantly, who stayed silent out of fear. The first witness of the day, a former assistant producer for a now-defunct live streaming startup called Vibe, which had allegedly been funded in part by a Combs innovation venture. She introduced herself as Lena T, nervous, mid-30s, thin-rimmed glasses, voice shaking. But what she carried changed everything. She presented a hard drive, now labeled Exhibit 48B, and claimed it was an internal backup never wiped during the company's bankruptcy. This drive contains an unreleased docuseries Diddy was developing in 2019, she explained. It was called The Circle. What was it about? The prosecutor asked. Recruitment, she replied. Not officially. The official story was a behind-the-scenes look at success, mentorship, and spiritual connectivity. But off-camera, we were filming guests in rooms they didn't know were rigged. She took a breath. One of those guests was Tom Cruise. The jury leaned in. The prosecutor continued, "Are you saying Mr. Cruise was filmed without consent?" "Yes." "There's a clip from the God Suite. He's seated, mid-conversation with Diddy. The audio is low, but he's clearly uncomfortable. He asks, 'Why is the door locked?' And Diddy replies, 'So you can be reborn.'" The room gasped. Lena added that this version of the docuseries was never meant for public eyes. It was a tool. Diddy used it to show potential collaborators what they were missing out on, and if they refused, he'd pivot, show them something darker. "What do you mean?" Clips of parties, people disoriented, hookups, footage that could ruin someone if taken out of context, or even if left in context. The defense interrupted. "This is slanderous. None of this has been authenticated." But the prosecution was ready. They brought in an FBI video analyst who had already spent 4 months verifying the footage's chain of custody. This drive, he said, was pulled from a mirror server inside Vibe's office, the same IP address that appears in previous metadata logs from the raids on Combs's Miami estate. He confirmed the clip of Cruise had a match with the actor's facial recognition markers at 98.2% certainty, and more disturbing, the God Suite featured multiple redundancies, meaning that even if one device failed, 2 backups kept rolling. Diddy's face had no expression, not rage, not panic, just blank. But the jury noticed. The court was then shown another transcript, this time from a session with an unnamed celebrity stylist, recorded during a wellness retreat at Diddy's Colorado compound. She described being offered a signature cocktail, followed by questions about who in the industry she trusted most. It felt like an initiation, she said. They wanted names, allegiances, and it was clear they wanted Tom Cruise. The prosecution then revealed a document, an internal email chain dated August 2020, subject line Mission Impossible. In it, a Combs Enterprises coordinator asks, "Any update on TC? He's still a soft no, huh?" The reply, "Let's bait him again with the elevation pitch. He's too big to walk away forever." A third email reads, "He's got the spine of a fighter. If he flips, we leverage. If he joins, we broadcast." "Broadcast what?" the prosecutor asked Lena. She looked down. "Control." Then came the second wave of the morning, another unexpected witness, this time a former Scientology liaison named Mr. Gray, who took the stand under immunity. His job, he claimed, had been to act as a go-between for powerful Hollywood figures looking to protect their reputations without officially aligning with legal protocols. In 2016, I was approached by an intermediary claiming to work with Mr. Combs. He said they were building a private coalition, an alternative media empire. He wanted to know if Tom Cruise could be convinced to endorse it. Not publicly, just by showing up. What did you tell them? That Cruise doesn't co-sign what he doesn't control. He wouldn't bite. And then they offered money. Then leverage. Then they threatened. Threatened how? Said they had clips. Said if Cruise didn't join, there'd be rumors, sex tapes, whispers about abuse. Nothing provable, but enough to stain, he paused. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. The courtroom fell into stunned silence again. Diddy, visibly sweating now, he adjusted his collar, he whispered something to his attorney, but it was clear there was no pivot left. The prosecution turned next to digital infrastructure. An FBI cyber unit expert presented evidence that confirmed a system of VPN routers had been used to remotely manage access to footage and data libraries from over 8 properties, including guest surveillance files specifically tagged with celebrity initials. One folder was named CZ_TC_London Suite MP4. While the footage itself was sealed by the court, the thumbnail displayed Cruz sitting on a leather couch, surrounded by books, talking animatedly. The file had been downloaded 6 times. The last IP address to access it, traced to a now defunct Revolt TV executive suite. This wasn't voyeurism, the prosecutor said. This was infrastructure. Built, funded, and used as leverage. Just before lunch, the final witness of the morning stepped in. An entertainment lawyer who'd worked as outside counsel for multiple luxury brands affiliated with both Cruz and Diddy. Her name, Marla Hensley. In 2017, I was brought in to look over licensing contracts, she said. One item stuck out, a clause that granted Combs Enterprises the right to utilize event footage for purposes of security, marketing, and creative development, but with no stipulation about consent. Was Tom Cruise aware of this clause? I flagged it to his team. I was removed from the deal within 48 hours. Did you ever hear from them again? Just once, she said, a voicemail from a blocked number. All it said was, you could have joined something eternal. After lunch, the courtroom atmosphere changed, tighter, tenser. The judge addressed the jury. You are about to hear the final testimony in this section. Please remember, your role is not just to evaluate what happened, but what it means. And with that, Tom Cruise returned. This time, no suit, just a black sweater. No script, just clarity. He sat down, no oath, he had already sworn. I came back, he said, because I want to finish what I started. I'm not perfect, I've made mistakes, but I've also walked through enough fire to know when something is poison. He looked directly at Diddy. You tried to sell me an empire built on fear. You called it family. You called it faith. But it was surveillance, manipulation, coercion. You wanted my face on your house of cards. And when I said no, you tried to make me fold. Anyway, Diddy stared back, lips tight, hands still. But here's the thing, Cruz said. You can film people without their permission. You can lie. You can even get the world to protect you for a while, but truth doesn't stay buried forever. It finds the crack. He stood. This is my crack in the wall. This is me saying no, publicly, on the record, so no one else has to do it in secret. The gallery was silent, the jury was still, the judge nodded. Thank you, Mr. Cruz. You are dismissed. He walked out without another word. Outside, security swarmed. Protesters applauded, helicopters hovered. The world had already reacted. On social media, a single frame of Cruz pointing at Diddy was shared over 5 million times within hours. The recruitment trended globally. Diddy Files was back at the top, and most telling, several celebrities who had remained silent throughout the trial began liking posts, retweeting quotes, and sharing encrypted messages that read like confessionals. By midnight, Diddy's legal team filed a motion requesting a gag order on all witness testimony. The judge denied it within minutes. Because the walls were down, the tunnel was exposed, and the ones who had walked through it in secret were finally speaking out in public. More would come, more files, more names, more truths, but for now, the courtroom belonged to one man who had said no when the rest of Hollywood said maybe. And that made him dangerous. Day 16 was set to begin with testimony from an anonymous Tier 1 witness. But for day 15, Tom Cruise had already stolen the spotlight. Not for a stunt, not for a script, but for breaking silence in a place where silence had been currency. He didn't break down, he didn't scream, he just showed up. And in a trial built on darkness, that alone was light. Day 16 opened with a hush so tense it felt like the walls themselves were listening. The jury sat motionless, the weight of Tom Cruise's testimony still fresh in the room like smoke after a fire. What had started as a celebrity trial was now being called a cultural autopsy. The prosecution called their final witness, an anonymous insider referred to only as Witness 19. He claimed to be a former member of Diddy's inner circle, someone who helped build what they called the Lighthouse, a psychological infrastructure for targeting and manipulating celebrities. Tom Cruise wasn't just a name, he testified. He was the target. If they got him, they could get anyone. The jury was shown internal documents from Project Halo, a recruitment operation that classified Cruise as a high-risk, high-reward target. Emails described repeated attempts to lure him into the Circle, a secret society masked as a creative alliance. Cruise declined. They marked him a defector. Then came the voice memos. In one, Diddy said, "If Cruise talks, we make him look insane. Control the narrative." The courtroom froze. But Diddy's empire wasn't just one man's ambition. It was an ecosystem of silence, NDAs, and fear. That fear broke again when the final witness stepped forward. Dane Doe 11, a former photographer hired for a Diddy special retreat. "He toasted to fire and flame," she said, voice shaking. Everyone cheered. But one woman in the corner was crying. Her footage vanished after a mysterious break-in. She stayed quiet until Cruise testified. "That gave me strength," she said. The prosecution closed with force. This case isn't about who stayed, it's about who got away. Tom Cruise walked out. Most couldn't. As the courtroom emptied, Diddy looked small. No longer a mogul, just a man cornered by his own empire. Outside, the world erupted. Cruise didn't fold, trended globally. On social media, survivors and celebrities alike praised those who spoke out. One post from a well-known director simply read, "He walked so others could run." And as the court adjourned, the message was clear. The silence had been broken. The tunnels were exposed. And the man who once ruled from behind the velvet curtain had been dragged into the light by the one person he couldn't control.